So we have a ship, and now we want to be able to fire beams. So we need another file, ship beam, which will hold the beam actions. We need a private const int, which is the initial y position, 55. And then we need to send an x to the constructor, and that x we send to the base using the coord entity that the object base holds. Okay, so we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 extra spaces from the left of the sprite because we need the beam to be centered in front of the ship, and we send init y also to the coord entity. We need a plot function, we need a move function, and we need get y function, and finally we need an unplot function or method. Okay, we need to inherit the object base, of course, also. Let's start with a plot function. Easy. We have an at method in our console base that the object base inherits, and we send the x and y coordinates and the string that we want to plot, a char. Let's go to the other file where we had the chars here. Let's pick that one for the beam. Okay. And then we write the unplot function with the space instead. Same thing. Let's go to the get y. Easy. Just return the coordinates y value. It should return an int, of course. Okay. That's good. The move function starts by deleting or unplotting the beam at the current position and then just decreases the coordinates in y value by 1. However, we need to change the y property so that it also has a set in the entity. Okay. Coordinates y value decreased. All right. Okay, now we have a ship, the ship beam class pretty much ready for now. Now we need another file, ship beams. The ship beams class will hold all the beams that we fire. So it needs a generic list of ship beam objects, which we call beams. We need using, of course, set collections generic, and we need integer number of beams that we will be able to fire at the same time, and we want the ship to be able to fire 3 beams at a time in the beginning. We're not using a constant because we might want to increase the value or the number of beams that we can fire later on when we reach more difficult levels or a power up or something like that. Okay, we create an instance of the beams for the beams variable, and then we need some function, of course. We need a plot function and an add function. We need a move function, and that should be it for now, I think. Okay, so let's start with the add function. So if the number of beams is 3 or already 3, we should just return, but okay, we need another variable for the limit here. Okay, so let's create another one. Private int max max beams. And okay, so and the number of beams should be 0 instead. No beams when we start the game. 3 is the maximum. Okay, now we're ready to go. If the number of beams I'm sorry, is greater or equal to the max number of beams, we return. Otherwise, we just add another ship beam to the list, basically. We send the x value to the add function, which is passed on also to the ship beam instance. Okay, so the plot function needs to loop over all the beams that we currently have in the list and just call their plot functions. The move function, okay, here we need a counter because otherwise the beams will move way too fast. We set the counter initially to 0, and in the move function we increase the counter and check if the counter is greater than, we need another constant, the speed, of course. Let's set it to 2. If the counter value is less than the speed limit, just return, do nothing. And then we set the counter to 0 and then perform the move actions. Yet again, we need to loop over all the beams, but we also need another generic list of ship beams. Let's call it them beams to delete. Whenever a beam has reached the top, it should be deleted. Okay, now we're ready to loop over the beams. For each var beam in beams, we call the beams, the beam, of course, beam move function. Each move, we call the move function for each beam. Okay, so we also need to check if the beam has reached the bottom or the top, We now use the get y function. If beam get y equals, and then we need an upper boundary constant, which we set to 0 for now. We will later on have a game header, so we need to change that later on, but for now we set it to 0. So if it equals the upper boundary value, we store the current beam in the list of beams to delete. Okay. All right. Okay, now we have moved all the beams and created a list of beams that we need to delete. Another loop. We loop over the beams to delete. We could call it beam again. Beam in beams to delete. Okay, so from the list of beams, the underscore beams, we just use the remove method and we remove the beam. Okay, that means that we remove all the beams and they will be deleted whenever they reach the top. Okay. Now let's go to the ship method. I've decided to let the ship hold the ship beams object. So we create a private ship beams variable, which we instantiate. And then we need to call the beam plot method in the ship plot method, and in the ship move method we need to call the beams move function that will handle all the movements of the beams. Okay, to the read key. If we hit the space bar, we want the ship to fire beams. Case console key space bar. Then we call the beams dot add. We will add and we will send the ship's x coordinate to the add function. Okay, that should be it. Let's try. Okay, we can fire multiple shots, obviously. Not good, but they are deleted when they reach the top. So far, so good. No errors. Okay, so what is our mistake? We have a number of beams. Okay, if we add a beam, the number of beams should be increased, of course. And whenever they've reached the top, the number of beams should be decreased by 1. Down here in the move method, in the loop of beams to delete. Okay. There we go. Let's try again. We can now fire 3 beams at a time, even though I'm hitting space more than that, and they are deleted whenever they reach the top. We're now ready for a space invasion.